the most difficult is actually, communicating with, the children. And for example, from my perspective, especially, with the first child, that, I kind of like, was the very, Chinese way. And then basically, whatever I say, that I expect, of my children to just follow of what I say, or, and do, what I suggest and this and that. And so with the first child, it was kind of like okay in a way, he was like okay, didn't really have big, issues. But then, when you came along, I definitely was having a lot of difficulty. Partially, I think it's because, you saw that how the way that I communicated with your brother, you know, and you didn't want, like a relationship with me the same way that, like your brother had with me. Because
Well, I
that's,
think that's, yeah, I think that's only natural though, because, every kid is really different, right? So sort of how you approach different kids is kind of up to you, I feel like. Especially when they're really young, like, a lot of what you think about how they're thinking is usually a projection from you, right? And you're kind of the one steering the boat, steering the ship at that point.
my case at that time, I had a lot of fear about the kids growing in United States. Like I literally really had a fear of, how you as a daughter, that growing up in an environment that I felt that I'm not familiar with, that I'm, worried about. I had a lot of fear for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, I guess that's the important thing when it comes to parenting. Like being self-aware is probably the best thing you can do for your kid. Just to have some awareness of your fears and your worries and what you might be thinking about how the kid is or how they're responding to you. That's probably a pretty big thing to pay attention to as a parent. That's probably the best thing you can do, I
Yeah.
feel like.
Yeah, I think at that time, my awareness was very limited. I don't think that I, actually even noticed that myself.
I mean, I think it's a hard thing to notice if, like I feel like I feel like if you have not taken that time on your own to sort of dive into yourself and learn about yourself, or you weren't forced to, then it's hard. And it's even harder when you have a kid involved because, where's your time to do that, right? It's hard to go inside of yourself. It's hard to have time even, you know? So,
Yeah, also there's a lot of other factors too. Because,
yeah.
yeah, I think that at that time, I have been, at home for many years. So it's kind of like also there's that fear of losing your own identity, like being stuck at home,
I mean, I have that fear now, like I'm at home with a kid almost 24/7 sometimes, right? And of course, a big part of me is like, oh God, am I gonna lose myself? Do I lose, my art practice, which I don't. But I think it's also a fear in society, that's sort of put on you, right? Oh, you're an individual. You should be doing individual things. You should be, whatever. But in the end, if we really think about the universe, we think about the lessons that we're learning and sort of what our soul is here to do and learn, right? It's all part of it. And, there are ways to compromise with fears too. You kind of can figure out things around a fear, and I actually think that the fear that I have is not even mine. I think it's yours now. I'm serious. Like this actually crosses my mind, in meditations. It's like, oh, this isn't even mine. This is my mom's, right? Because I grew up in that environment, like, oh God, I'm becoming her, I'm becoming like, I'm having that fear. But in reality, we are two very different people. Like we are,
Yes.
and the way we do things is very different. And,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think that it's interesting how much we take from our parents, and like I don't want to have that fear and then pass that along to my kid, right? So
Yeah,
it's like, yeah,
exactly.
so it's like okay, I can work with this, I can sort of, yeah, figure this out.
Good that you have that awareness,
Yeah.
and this is actually why that the first question that I have with the chat GPT was that about that whether we have free will, because for example in this case is that that you're aware that actually this fear is not even your own fear, it's
Mhm.
it's kind of like a shadow from your parents, right? And but for a lot of the people that they probably don't have that awareness, and then this thing will just grinding them, grinding them, and then there's also many other factors, how secure that you feel about yourself, for example in my case, when I was, as a young teenager from 11 to 16, I was not being accepted to the youth communist league. And, but to me, it was translated to that, I was not being accepted. And that actually affected my adult life a lot,